Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 14th day of April 2025. Welcome to our show today. I'm going to bring Vicky right on. We had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, and I had to restart the computer and try to reconfigure things a little bit. Didn't expect it, but sometimes we just have to go with it and expect the unexpected and endeavor to persevere. How are you this morning, Vicky?
Just fine, thank you.
Good.
All ready to go. I'm glad it wasn't my problem on my side.
Yeah, there's some comfort in that. Yeah, I just, sometimes it just goes that way. And unfortunately, we just have to work with technology. And technology is great as long as it works. But when it doesn't work, man, it sucks. So
that's the truth.
Yeah, so here we go. At any rate, you said, do you have a good weekend?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Anything of note?
No, I've just been, busy working on a timeline, for the first Bush administration, and trying to put together the picture of George H.W. Bush, and he's the one, of course, that really he kicked off the New World Order. And I don't know anybody who knew what he meant at the time. But
was it 1,000 points of light in his one little speech there? He gave us some clues, didn't he?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it really ticks me off that our media didn't give us any heads up on who he was, who he really was.
Well, they're all in on it. That's the problem that I have with it. I wrote a post this morning, and I think this is fairly significant. I'm going to read this to you and just hear what you have to say about it, because I was really pondering things this morning. I haven't even been doing a lot of posting about things because, quite honestly, I feel like they're just lying about everything to us. And so on both sides, which we're in a war right now. So, I guess we can expect that. So here you go. I'm going to read this to you. Morning thoughts touch on some profound ideas in perception, deception, and deeper currents of conflict, whether spiritual, societal, or strategic. The notion that all war is deception aligns with the classic strategy thinking like Sun Tzu's Art of War, where misdirection and hidden motives shape outcomes. Framing life as a constant battle between good and evil suggests a moral clarity that can guide decisions, but it also risks oversimplifying complex human motives. The Daily Panic tabloid thrives on chaos, amplifying fear to cloud judgment. Spot on. It's the observation. It's a tactic as old as time. Keep people reactive, not reflective. Walking by faith, not sight, emphasizes intuition and conviction over surface level noise, which ties to critical thinking. God is in control in the illusion that we have, and there is an illusion that we have ever been in control or are in control is a total myth. Game theory fits here too. People's actions or silence reveal their strategies. The quiet ones in the room, they're often calculating, observing patterns others miss. In corporate settings and broader power plays, silence can signal confidence or conceal intent. The stock market is a distraction and can clearly uncover allegiance to this world rather than God. Volatility preys on emotion, weakness, but it's often a symptom of deeper mechanisms. Whether economic, political, or ideological, the insidious undercurrent could be anything from unchecked power, consolidation, to narratives shaping public belief. Look beyond the obvious. The lens of skepticism and faith is a solid way to navigate the fog of war, whatever form it takes. We walk by faith, not by sight. Who is in control not only shapes how we see the world, it determines our future by the actions we take, the prayers we offer to God. We desire a better world, Hebrews 11:16. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. The world changes when we submit to God, pray, and then walk by faith, knowing that he has this and it's going to be okay. So I've been really pondering all this because people are losing their minds. They're just kind of like, there's very few people that are coping. Probably a lot of people here that are watching are the copers in the world, because they wouldn't stick with us if they weren't. But you've got pockets everywhere of people that are coping. And I get frustrated with the lies. I'm not a good person to lie to, because for me, when somebody lies to me, I'm just like, right then and there, I'm done with it. I don't like lies. I don't like deception. I won't participate in it, and I don't appreciate it in any way, shape, or form. But what are your thoughts about what you've been seeing? I'm gonna read Justice.
Well, I've been, of course, thinking about what Trump is doing, and I think that this is another round of QE1, QE2, QE3. When they, in the 1990s, well, it was even before the 1990s, in the 1980s, they gutted our country of manufacturing jobs. And supposedly we were going to have an economy based on information services. It was going to be all about services and environmental technology. Well, it turns out, that the vast majority of people can't work in the area of services because we're talking about professions, like lawyers and accountants, and like I was a computer programmer, systems analyst. You can't build an economy on that. It concentrated wealth at the top, and it left all the people at the bottom out of the economy. And I think that was done intentionally. I think that what George Herbert Walker Bush was doing actually was implementing the Morgenthau Plan for the United States.
What is that plan? Can you elaborate?
Yes. After World War II, when Germany surrendered, the Allies, which were Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States, and France, I believe. Anyway, they got together and, what are going to be the plans for Germany? Well, Morgenthau was the Treasury Secretary here in the United States. And working for him was Harry Dexter White. Harry Dexter White came up with a plan basically to gut Germany of their industrial capacity, because these people equate industrial capacity, money, with the ability to wage war. So the Morgenthau Plan was to turn Germany into what they called a pastoral state, meaning all agriculture. Just, totally strip them of their ability to produce anything. And it was Herbert Hoover who they asked, I guess the military, somebody asked Herbert Hoover to go over and do an analysis of Germany. And he came back and he said, yeah, you can do this, but you're going to kill about 25 million people or so. So it's really not a good plan. And that's when George Marshall came up with his plan to rebuild the industrial capacity of Germany. But and I don't know how the Allies felt about that, but that's what happened. So, and they did rebuild Germany's industrial capacity. But I think that over time, and particularly in the presidency of George Herbert Walker Bush, they actually began implementing the Morgenthau Plan here in the United States. Strip us of our industrial capacity, open our borders, and allow massive immigration to the United States of foreigners, and put foreigners in the jobs, that were not service level jobs.
Well, that's what they've certainly done. I mean, they did it with Tyson, where they were actually paying the labor costs for putting illegals into the job market. How many Americans lost that? I mean, this is nuts, and it's our tax dollars that's funding it. These people need to be prosecuted for treason. Every single one of them that stepped on the necks of every single American in the United States.
Yeah. Well, they allowed employers to import on visas their own workforce. And that's how we started getting overrun. I don't know if you remember around 2003 or so, but our borders were being overrun. And there were even groups of men who put together militias to stop it, to try and stop it. But, I watched that whole thing go on. And of course, all the time that I've been on the internet, I've been learning history that I never knew. And the history of immigration in our country, or actually it's just legalized invasion, is what it is.
Agreed.
I watched it, but I didn't know where it came from. But if you follow the timeline of George Herbert Walker Bush's administration, well, Reagan started it with the treaty on the southern border with Mexico. And then he signed a free trade agreement with Canada, creating a free trade area. So that's what they call it, free trade. Free trade is treason. A free trade of North America. And then Bush came in to finish us off, with his UN. And he told us, New World Order. And that was real.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that we really need to go back and study to. In fact, I was just having a discussion this morning with my husband about this, on the fact that if you go back to what Clinton and Bush did, that they were definitely playing ball together, no matter what anybody thinks. All of them were. And going back to Reagan, I've got a lot of questions. People like to quote him as like a great president, but I'm not so sure that that's the case. And I think that we really have to go back to questioning all of our history, because we really don't, we've just become aware in the last, say, 5-10 years of how manipulative the news has been, the politicians have been, and such. I mean, we all knew that they were dirty. Okay, I'm not gonna say we didn't. We knew something was wrong. We knew something was wrong our entire lives. I'm pretty sure about that. But we didn't realize that all of these things that we trusted were infiltrated, and they were using them against us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the Great Awakening, and people come to terms with what's actually happening. And I don't think we're there yet. That's the scary part, is that there's so much more to uncover. And I got to tell you, I've been watching this gal who's done deep digs on the satanic cults, and then lo and behold, today. And yesterday there was a guy younger guy that killed his parents, and he's tied into the Order of Seven Angles and all of these other satanic cults out there. And I think that this is what's going to really be a difficult thing for people to come to terms with. We're focusing on child pornography and also human trafficking. It's all part of it, but there's a deeper structure behind this that we're going to have to address. And I think that probably because of how evil they are, they control the politicians. And I think there's actually some really good people that have been blackmailed into doing really bad things.
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's the method. That's what Epstein was doing,
It's the control.
Yep. Set people up for control. But the thing is, though, we've got to get control of the Department of Justice and start prosecuting these people. I don't know. I'm sure you've noticed that they might expose just, top layer of corruption, but they never prosecute. And Congress is basically, I think up until this year, they've been sitting on their hands, not doing anything. And I suspect it's because a lot of them are corrupted, maybe
I'm
blackmailed
sure.
as well.
I'm sure. And I keep hearing this phrase over and over again that you can't let out all the truth because, part of the truth is coming out. It's like, you know what? I'm sorry, but it needs to come out. People that want to know what's really going on. I think there's more of us that want to know what's going on than the sheeple that just want to hold their head in the sand. And it's going to be hard for people to come to terms with some of this. It's going to be very hard to come to terms with it, especially when they've sold us a lie that Satan doesn't exist or that God doesn't exist. They moving them out of our families and our lives and all that sort of thing, moving God out and not, taking prayer out of our school, all of this. They've been trying to distance us from the reality that we are a spirit living in a meat suit. And this is that things aren't readily apparent for what's actually happening and what's out there. They can control us by all sorts of methods. The LED lights. I mean, I've got a lot of questions with that because when I first started researching, there was a guy that was from one of the departments that he was working in, and he brought up the fact that they were using LED lights to control people, and he said they could listen to us through it too, which is kind of interesting to me. But the technology that we have is a way more advanced than what anybody can possibly get their arms around.
Yeah, I think
I'm going to bring this up or not. I'm going to try, but can you speak to that? I'm going to try to bring something up that's just freaky. A friend of mine sent this to me, and it was a friend of his that sent it to him, and it's like we don't know anything. We can posture on things, but I think there's so much we don't know that it's going to be very frightening when the actual truth comes out for a lot of people. I'm like I want to be the first one in the pool when the truth comes out.
Oh, me too. I mean, I want to know the truth, and I want people to know the truth, because the future that I see for our children and grandchildren is not a good future. It's not a happy future. It's a future as a slave if they live, because the objective all along has been population reduction. And they've used climate change as a cover story for basically killing our economy. And if you kill the economy, it's just like Herbert Hoover found in his study, you murder people. And that's really kind of what's been happening to our population. They exported our productive capacity, and they thought we were all going to have information jobs. Well, guess what? Not everybody is smart enough to have an information job. And that's just the way it is. People need jobs, and some people really even want to work with their hands. They want to do physical type work, not brain work. And so, it's not that I'm saying that these other people, the brain workers, are better than the physical workers. It's just you've got to have both.
Yeah, and we're all different, Honestly, I can kind of do both sides of that with being in the office as well as doing physical work, but I'd rather do the physical work. It's a lot more enjoyable, it's more relaxing, and to me, it's more fun. I get kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like, it's just there's good and bad about everything. So we're just kind of stick with that, I guess. I'm trying to find something to show you that's kind of crazy. I got to see where. Oh, I know where it's posted. Hang on a minute. This is really nuts. I had a friend text this to me, and let me see if I can get it up here. You can keep talking if you'd like.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I'm going to try to find this. I'm going to try to find this video because this is one of those things that I don't know. It's something worth checking out because we don't know things. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, well, it never before the year 2000, after the after the stock market crash, and then as they tried to go through, then we had 9/11. I believed the media. I mean, I believed that they were telling us the important news. Not all of it. I mean, I wasn't that naive, but um, I thought we were getting the basic truth. Turns out that's absolutely false. They were creating an illusion for us, and the 9/11 was the shock that brought everybody's mind awake. So, and I've been working on it ever since. What the hell happened? And so, and I'll just say it, George Herbert Walker Bush was a traitor. He worked for the UN in 1974, and I think he continued to work for the UN. He's the one that opened up China, really, and then, as president, and that he moved us into this environmentalist nightmare. Climate change. Climate change is the biggest bunch of BS ever. So they've got 100 years of history, which are models, not real data. It's models, and so they think they can predict what's happening on the earth after 100 years of study when the earth is millions of years old.
Yeah, I think I've had discussions with some of my friends about that, and there's some people that are very literal on stuff, and my argument is, okay, what mark the days? So how even if you're going to be literal about it, what marks the days? How do you know? God says that 1,000 years is like a day in His time. I have a real hard time with that. It requires a little bit more thought. Boy, this is really bugging me that I can't find that video. It's a great video, and it showed all sorts of stuff that was just like wild, like wildly, weirdly crazy. Now I got to see if I can find it because it was pretty shocking. A shocking recount of something up in the sky that we just don't, we need to question it. What is it and what's going on? Reagan betrayed the United States. He helped destroy more small farms. The song "Rain on the Scarecrow" is about this. You know what? I'm kind of out on almost every one of them. They all got up there by being part of the agenda.
Yeah. Well, Reagan was an actor. Reagan knew about computers because of GE Theater in the 1950s. He worked for General Electric. And there was a guy named Lemuel Boulware who had been a war propagandist during the war. Well, Ronald Reagan went to work and learned his propaganda trade from Lemuel Boulware. And so Reagan, from the time of the war forward, he was a propagandist, and he was damn good at it. He wasn't a great actor. He was a B movie actor. But as a propagandist in real time, he was probably the best. And so then I have a page on him. I mean, when he became governor of California, that's when they started collectivizing these small towns and villages in California. And it's hard, you can't hardly argue with the collectivizing control management of infrastructure when you're talking about small towns in a small proximity. But there was more. It was a political agenda as well as a, physical infrastructure agenda, and it was the political agenda that was carefully controlled.
We're looking at right now, talk about political agenda and what's going on. What do you think is going on with the tariffs right now? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I honestly think I don't know if you remember back in I think it was 2005 or 6 when our economy just came to a halt, basically, and what George Bush did was the administration made a deal with the offshore corporations to repatriate their profits. It was kind of an extortion deal. The government's revenues at the time of this hearing were at their lowest point since the 1950s. So they needed to get an injection of money into the economy. And so what they did was to make a deal with these offshore corporations for a minimal tax rate of, I don't know, like 5% or something like that, to repatriate their offshore profits. And so that's how they were able to get the economy going again. But it happens every few years. We need that infusion of cash from the offshore corporations. And I think that that's what's going on right now, except that I think maybe they're going to try and make those tax reductions permanent. The problem is that the corporations will never be satisfied with that. When you have a money-making corporation, they are never satisfied. That's how they continue to grow, like parasites, because they're never satisfied. They've got to keep growing. So even if they put this tax cut in, it's not going to work in the long run. They will just want more and more and more and more. It's the nature of the beast,
Well, we're going to have to do like fundamental cuts. I mean, that's the only way around this, in my opinion, is we have to have fundamental cuts done. We won't, we will not be able to achieve what I think we're trying to achieve without that.
Okay, yes, that that's true. Except that when they gutted our economy of manufacturing, and they put the information companies, the IT companies, in position, to build out the internet, so you could have service jobs and such. They needed to have, especially after the economy crashed in the year 2000, 2001, what they did was to build a social welfare economy. And that's why you have all these groups of nonprofits, basically providing social services. They privatized the social welfare. And so you have all of these people who could not participate in the information economy on social welfare programs. So, and that was done intentionally. It's like I said, you go back and look what they did. They gutted our economy of manufacturing. And then they focused on environmental technology and information. And that is the services economy. Well, the vast majority of people in the country can't participate in these, can't or don't want to, but I think can't participate in the services economy. You can't run a country on a services economy. I mean, look what happened.
You have to have manufacturing, you have to produce things.
Yes, you have to produce things. But decision was made during the Reagan. We don't want that dirty manufacturing. But when you dig down deeper and you take a look at the Morgenthau plan for post-World War II Germany, what they've really been doing is implementing the Morgenthau plan on in the United States. And the thinking is that if you have a healthy economy and you have money, then you have a military then you can have a military to protect your economy. If you don't have a healthy economy, you can't have a military. And so one of the things that happened in the 1960s was that legislation was passed, and Prescott Bush, George Bush's father, was one of the people, and so was Al Gore Sr. They passed legislation in Congress for the general and complete disarmament of the United States.
What year was that?
1961. And
so Kennedy knew it. That was all what he was trying to tear down. All the secret stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, but they killed him first. So anyway, that was the idea, and you can't argue with that. If you don't produce things, if you don't sell things, then you don't have money to fund a military. And what they started to do in the early 1990s was basically to dismantle the military. They cut the funding for the military. They were supposed to scale back. There was a guy who was at Ron Dellums from California who was, I think, chairman of the Armed Services Committee or something like that. And they started cutting the budgets. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, they brought Mikhail Gorbachev over here, set him up at the Presidio, and he participated in the base closings and the rebuilding of the economies around what were the areas surrounding the military bases. And they set him up at the Presidio. And of course, Nancy Pelosi and her husband, they're the ones that got legislation passed to privatize the Presidio, put it into a private trust. And that's where all of these communist Marxist NGOs are located. That's where the Tides Foundation is located. And so,
well, they're you can definitely see the structure that they're all together. I didn't know the history to the degree that you had. I know some of it, but not like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing when you look at it. I mean, the Presidio is probably the most premier piece of real estate in our entire country. It's just an incredible piece of real estate. And they put it in that Presidio Trust. And then at Letterman Hospital, the Letterman Hospital was a military hospital there. That's where they set up the offices of all of these nonprofits, communist, Marxist nonprofits. And it's pretty amazing. Let me see if I can find that article that I have on.
This is pretty crazy. I've got the presidio.gov, Presidio Trust, public-private partnership. Let's see if I can bring this up here a minute. It's the first time you've mentioned this.
Oh, there's so many. I could talk for days.
Yeah, this is the first time you really brought this up. Yeah, so this is really interesting to me because, quite honestly, when you look at what the DNR and Eagle, whatever you want to call it, they changed their names to keep everybody confused, I think. And if you look at the park strategy, there you go, there's the Green New Deal, the beginning of it, the ecological capture. And the thing of it is that they know the right words to say. Who doesn't want to protect the United States? But like everything else, they've captured it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have professional people who study language and people's. There was a guy named Frank Lunz, Lunz, I believe his name is. And he used to do these focus groups, getting people's impressions of different words so that they could manipulate speeches, manipulate the dialogue, so that people have one perception when they're really talking about something else. The term sustainable development is absolutely classic. It used to be that when people heard that term, they just applied the common meaning of the words, without understanding that there was a whole big political agenda behind it. They just thought, oh, sustainable development, that's a good thing. And I include myself in that. I didn't realize this game with words that they were playing. Of course, once you understand how that game is played, then they can't play it on you anymore.
Well, and I think that there's been a lot of talk. Watch what they do with the legislation that they do. I mean, it's like every one of our terms. What is a man? What is a woman? Just going as stupid as that is. That it's the terminology. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that when they say man, you have to say, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, it's.
How easy can it be? I mean, what's a man and what's a woman? If you don't understand what that is, I'm not sure any of us can help you. You know what I mean? That is just crazy. Like, on the farm, nobody's confused. Who's the only one on the planet that's confused? Human beings. It's crazy.
Well, that is a political agenda. You have to understand. They're doing it on purpose. They know what a man is. They know what a woman is. That it's a political agenda to try and create multiple genders. For a while, they were even in Idaho. They were talking about allowing people to change their genders in court. Well, do you realize how many computer systems would be screwed up if they did that? If all of a sudden, they make Vicky Davis a man. Now, who is the real Vicky Davis? Will the real Vicky Davis stand up? Because every one of my records throughout the whole country, I'm not just talking about one company, all of the records, everywhere I've been, everything I've touched, would be screwed up from that point because my records no longer match.
Well, it's like the FBI tactic of changing spelling on things. When I was registering for my last flight that I was on, they asked whether you're a man or a woman. How come the airlines have got this thing figured out, but none of the rest of us can? It's like there's just so many double standards out there. It's insanity.
Well, it's because we're at war. I mean, our government basically declared war on us. And the corporations are in partnership with the government, and they declared war on us. So.
There's the wonderful Tides Foundation. They say it right at the top. Shifting power, advancing social justice. So these are social justice warriors out there. So the top of the food chain for craziness.
Yeah.
But look at it's all, moving money. Moving money. Look at that. Fiscal. Fiscal responsibility.
Well, a big part of the problem, I just heard this the other day, a big part of the problem for corporations is that when they globalized their corporation, they now have to accommodate the cultures and laws of other countries. And so, you know, they're no longer American corporations. That was the biggest act of treason in the entire world, was to sign on to the World Trade Organization and to allow corporations to move their operations offshore. Nothing prevented them from opening up subsidiary operations in foreign countries. They always did that, but they had their base in the United States. Well, since when they globalized those corporations, they could move to offshore tax havens. And that's when they started having a problem with the U.S. tax base. And, these morons are always saying, well, they just pass the tax on through, you pay it anyway. Well, no, because for the most part, ordinary people, they have a choice whether they buy or they don't buy. The ability for corporations to raise their price in an unlimited way doesn't exist. They still have to meet the market. Well, they really, there are so many ways that they screwed over our country. And one of the ways was to convert to the Japanese model of the keiretsu. A keiretsu is an organization of businesses along the supply chain of the corporation. And a bank sits at the top of the keiretsu. And so you really have what it is, it's a supply chain monopoly. And in the 1990s, there was a lot of debate. I don't know if you remember the debate about, how do we deal with Japanese competition? Well, apparently they decided to, and I didn't know this until just recently, they decided to allow corporations to set up cartels that are supply chain cartels. Now, what a supply chain is, and I found this out when I was working up in Alaska, because all the vehicles that they had up there, they had the entire parts list, the manifest for the parts in a computer system. So they knew down to the smallest screw and how many of them were required to build a vehicle. Well, that's the supply chain. Where do you buy these parts that are required to build this vehicle? And which includes multiple corporations, right? And at the top of the pyramid is the channel master for the supply chain. And they allowed U.S. corporations to build supply chain cartels. And so that's why they can control our government, because they don't just control their own corporation. They control the whole supply chain for whatever the product is.
This is fascinating, because I've been doing some research on the people that are running for office, and I didn't know the word and I didn't know the structure, but I saw it, and I didn't know it was a formal thing, So I'm like sitting here going, you got to be kidding me. This is why somebody would go from a $33 million company to a $138 million company in a relatively short period of time, and then watch the expansion go into other states and such. So this is very interesting to me. I can't believe how timely it was that we went to this because of what I was researching on candidates.
Well, it's you would never think that our country would allow such a thing as a cartel like this to exist, because we had laws against monopolies, right? Except the laws against monopolies were against a single corporation that was trying to dominate the entire market.
This is just blowing my mind, because this was what I was looking into, specifically for one candidate that I was looking into, because I've been looking into different candidates. I'm going to write a kind of an analysis on what I'm seeing going on out there, and I just can't even believe how timely this is, because that, when you see somebody expanding and having all of these. Now, it's not just the public-private partnerships, it's it's the buddy system. And, it's a monopoly. And I can't believe there's a name for it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to start calling it a process monopoly.
That's the perfect word for it.
Yeah, because it does cross company boundaries. And the thing is that it's invisible. You don't see it unless you, first of all, understand that these kind of monopolies exist, and then you have to go search it out. What parts do they use? But that's kind of what happened to Boeing. Boeing made the best planes in the world when it was all a self-contained corporation, but they implemented the model, and they started outsourcing different components of their airplanes. And on the bright side, they control a whole pyramid of suppliers. On the dark side, you can have one supplier to sabotage your airplane. And I think that's a lesson that Boeing learned and is learning. So
what do you think about all the plane crashes that we're seeing? I saw a rate that the plane crash frequency has actually gone down over the past few years, but I have a lot of questions about who's on these planes.
I do too. I was wondering about that.
Are they actually on the planes, or is this like something like a drone type of a situation? Because I know they can land planes without a pilot. I mean, it's not ideal, but if that's something I was told by somebody who was in the military, that they can land a plane through remote control. And so my question are those people actually gone, or did they stage it? We just don't know, but I think it's worth pondering.
Yeah, well, we don't know, because you watch very carefully whenever there's any kind of an incident that the media makes a big deal out of, because there will be a dialectic come out of that. They say, oh, we've got to fix that. And then that's when the Congress will pass legislation to change something. Our country runs by dialectics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why that is. Why do they think they have to do something, have a big media show about it? If it's something major that they want to change, then I can kind of see it. But for the most part, people don't really pay much attention. They say, oh, a plane crash, and then they move on. And the media helps in that.
Well, and part of it is because they've got us looking in every direction. Back to my post today, most of what we're seeing is distraction. So they have you look here, look here, look here. You can't get a read on anything because you don't focus on it long enough to actually know what's going on. So it's like shiny stuff. I mean, that's in a way, that's how you train horses. And horses and people are a lot the same. When they're afraid of something, you let them ponder it a minute, but you try to distract their attention to what you want them to look at. And that's how you get more stable horses when you're trying to teach them to be okay with the craziness out on a trail. You know, I always see people who ride horses that go to shows and such. They're generally not the best riders out there. They ride in circles. They ride in circles. They ride in circles. Everything has to be ideal. I was at a barn a few years ago, and that's one thing I saw all the time. But if you take that same horse and rider out on the trail, it's a whole different ball game. You get a squirrel that comes on, and oh my gosh, it's a lion ready to eat them, and they absolutely lose their minds. You know, they go crazy. But I want to get into this a little bit more, the keiretsu and the fact that this is a legal monopoly, not a a singular entity. That this is amazing to me.
Yeah, I found one in Idaho, and actually, it's those kinds of committees in our communities that are making policy for your local community.
That makes a perfect sense, because you can see it in our local government and where I live. You can see exactly how they work. You've got realtors, you've got developers, you've got builders, and they're all in on it together.
Yes, exactly.
So basically they've stepped over. I mean, Byron Township is famous for this. The last meeting that I was at, we came in and we told them that we needed some questions answered, such as drainage for whatever's going on. I mean, there was people whose backyards are going to flood off of this development. And quite honestly, if we had done the work there, we would have had to put up about a $10 million bond in case something went wrong, or we would have had to change the schools or traffic patterns or whatever it may be, you know, rewire the utilities. I mean, all of these things that come at a cost. No, that's not what they do. They let these developers come in and build whatever they want to build. And then all of a sudden, well, let's see. I gotta see. Why is my battery running low? This is wild. This should not be running low. And then all of a sudden, there we go. And then all of a sudden, you have, I think I just fixed it. Should have had that plugged in a little better. Then all of a sudden, you know, you've got no accountability to the people in the area, and they just kind of like thumb their nose at you. So all of those things that were brought forward in the meeting, they just rubber stamped it on through. So, and I can tell you, it was exactly what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. Well, I first found a lady. I was working with the Eagle Forum of Idaho, and a lady from a small farm town called Star, Idaho, she sent us an email asking what in the world is going on, because they're about 20 miles outside of Boise, which is the capital city. It was a small farm town, no infrastructure to speak of, but all of a sudden they're going to build 160 some odd houses, a housing development out there. Well, there's no water, there's no sewer, there's no roads, there is nothing. It's a small farm town. And she asked us to investigate, find out what the heck's going on. And so we did, and I researched it, and I found out a lot about it, but I couldn't figure out what the overall game plan was. Why were they doing this? Well, it turned out, and then in 2010, it came up again, and that's when I discovered that they were bringing in communist Chinese money into the Boise area through the EB-5 visa program. What I found out was that with Star, Idaho, they were trying to build out a metropolitan region.
That's what they're doing all over the place. They're going after the land, and they want to pack people in there like rats. They make money they make money off of just getting them into an area, disabling them, taking away the food supply, or being able to grow their own food. And then their lame excuse is like, well, we're just taking orders from the state. It's like, what about the people you're supposed to be representing? None of you are doing it. And it's not just the state. I think that the real threat is the local governance. That's the real threat right there.
Yes, it is. And we're having a real problem with the city of Boise. The LGBTQ community actually runs Boise, and they are kind of empowered. And I think what it is, it's kind of like putting a skunk in the garden party. Nobody wants to get close. And so I think that's what these organizations are in cities. And they're so offensive. I mean, they call you all kinds of names,
Oh yeah. They sent me a thing. Now you got to understand, I am so far away from houses, and all of our neighbors kind of love us because we give them eggs, and we just kind of, we're neighborly, we know each other. But they sent us an anonymous thing that said that somebody complained about our roosters, and because we keep a rooster in with the hens because they protect the hens from all sorts of things. A rooster will kill or attack anything that comes in to mess with the hens because they know what a man is. Okay, that's what it is, and which I got to add into. It is not possible for us to be bothering neighbors because we're so far away. And if we were, the neighbors would say something because we know them well enough. But there's nobody that's close enough that there's actually a thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like we're right on top of somebody, but they can say whatever they want. You can't face your accuser. They just basically have these harassment because why? Because they want my land. That's why they
That's
hit a
right.
tax bill. They hit a tax bill on us, and it took us 4 times to go down there to find it. This is Byron frickin' Township, Michigan. Straw hat bureaucrats that, when I ask them questions, they're like, well, we don't know the answer to this. We're just citizens. It's like, then you shouldn't have the job.
Yeah. Well, you know what you should look for? You should look for the metropolitan organization that you'll be in. Because they do want to set these outside bound areas that will become the metropolitan region for your city. So you've got to find out what, well, it's easy to figure out what is the lead city, but look for the organizational structure that becomes the cartel for the management of your area. I mean, do you remember Rosa?
What name would it go under? And then I got to bring my next guest on here shortly. I'm sorry, we got started late today because of technical difficulties. But so I've got Grand Rapids metropolitan area. What would you use?
Well, maybe that's it. In Idaho, the partnership of mayors, which is completely illegal as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, no kidding.
For a mayor to participate in a private sector partnership. But it was an organization of mayors, 5 mayors in the Boise area, and Star, Idaho, which was the far boundary. The mayor of Star was participating in what was called the Treasure Valley Partnership.
Wow.
And they signed a partnership agreement, and they were able to apply for grants under that partnership name. So, I mean, it goes on. I mean, it's kind of complicated how all of these relationships work, and that nobody explains it. I probably worked on just what was going on in Boise probably for a year and a half. And then in 2010, when that delegation of communist Chinese came to Meridian, Idaho, I worked on it again for another couple of years because it's totally un-American. what they do. Whatever your perception of America was, that isn't it.
Well, I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to look into for even our candidates to see if they are in fact actually lawfully, I don't know, participating in commerce in the United States, or if they are taking this down through a supply line cartel. This is just shocking. But I think we're going to be able to see more and more of what's going on as we dig down into this. And I'd like to ask everybody out there to jump in on these candidates and take a look at it. I went down the rabbit hole on Anthony Hudson yesterday. I found a guy that did a whole bunch of research on him in Michigan. And I'm going to tell you what, I got some real concerns about what we're seeing there, including domestic violence, I see him in with Carla Wagner from Axe My Tax, which is a stupid plan. And it was all about getting the people who are trying to commandeer our land off of the hook for the property tax. It's not about us. They don't do anything for us that's pure. And what are they going to do? How are they going to shift those taxes? They're going to take it away from property tax, no cuts planned, nothing. It's a headline, shift it back to us in the form of another tax. So Axe My Tax is property tax abatement for dummies, because people are not looking into this and understanding the overall structure of this. And then when I see, people pushing somebody who's got one heck of a record, I mean, we're going to have to look in and bring the receipts, because it makes me look at this and say, why is this guy paying himself out of his campaign funds more than he's doing anything else? Like, I think he's at 60% go back into his pocket for salary. Are you think that he's going to do anything different when he gets in office?
Yeah,
absolutely not.
People
but he's
used
got
to
great headlines. I mean, he's got the headlines. Everybody's like, "Yay, go sports team, go!" But they're not looking at it correctly. So, unbelievable. But there's more to come, because there's another guy that I'm going to tell you they're planning on running, and I'm seeing exactly what you were talking about. Karitsu, is that what it's called?
Karetsu, yeah.
Karetsu. And I think we need to look into this, because you don't add $100 million in business that quickly. I'm just going to say it. Unless
you join into a supply chain.
Unless you join into a supply chain.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's really a cartel.
Foundations. You bet it is. So
and they should be outlawed. They should have been outlawed. They should never have changed the laws to allow it to begin with.
When did they do that? What year and how? And I want you to think about this. We're going to talk about this later. I have to bring my next guest in, Aubree Campbell, because we're going to talk about something that's deeply disturbing. It's voter surveillance, and she's written an article. They literally have tied in the voters to the ballots. They've got them tied in. There's surveillance going on. And I think that we're going to be shocked when we hear about the hidden infrastructure of voter surveillance, evidence of an unlawful relational database linking ballots to voters. This is so deep and so vast. If it defies all reason. But thank you for coming on this morning. I'm going to bring her on, and I'm sorry that I got started late this morning, guys. But I had a computer crash happen, so we had to start a little bit late. But glad everybody's with it.
Thanks, Donna. We'll talk later.
Yeah, let's talk about this more next week, and I really appreciate it. We're going to go for a quick break, and I will be right back. Good morning, and excuse me, and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg. It's the 14th day of April 2024, and welcome to our show. We're going to be talking to Aubree Campbell, and this article has, I think it's going to rock a lot of people's perceptions of our elections. And knowing that we are in a surveillance state, there's nothing that you could do that isn't under surveillance right now, no matter what it is. So make sure you do the right thing, because you should do it without the threat of surveillance. But everything we do is being surveilled, and that's just the way it is. We're going to come to terms with this. The hidden infrastructure of voter surveillance, evidence of an unlawful relational database linking ballots and voters. It's for real. And we're going to be talking to Aubree Campbell. She's the founder and lead investigator for TBTR Strategies, founded in Tarrant County, Texas, with a passion for election security. She's trained under Dr. Laura Pressley of True Texas Elections and worked with several national election security groups. Her work has exposed the administrative deep state's facilitation of election fraud without detection, and has successfully filed legislation. I love that. I like the filing the legislation aimed at holding executive agencies accountable. TBTR US provides citizens with the knowledge and tools to engage in election integrity, empowering them to not only protect their own rights, but to pass these vital safeguards down to future generations by equipping families with the means to identify undue influence and improper practices. With help, they help to ensure the enduring strength of our republic. I love this, because this is somebody who is willing to get in and do what it takes. Good morning, Aubree. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And I was so pleased that you shared this with me and that we're going to be able to talk about this. I started reading this. I'm going to bring your article up right now, your Substack. And I started reading this, and this is incredible. They actually have the voters linked to their ballots.
Well, this is what we've been tracking for several years, that we have been unsuccessful in obtaining explanations for. We've been doing this for since 2021. And for the longest time, we didn't have answers for a lot of the things that we were finding. And so we were looking into it. We kept asking questions. There were a few questions that it seemed as though somebody didn't want answered, including what some of the data was that's being added to the ballot after voter check-in or upon voter check-in. And then again, after the voter has made their selections and prints their ballot from a ballot marking device in an electronic voting system. I've compiled in this report, this is just my work and the work of the people around me that I've compiled together, that shows an extreme likelihood that there is an unlawful relational database that is able to track voters and their ballots from the inception of the voter registration file all the way to the casting of the ballot and reporting to the state and maybe beyond. So the only way for us to definitively debunk or verify this is to be granted access to the computerized voting systems, their coding, all of their updates. We need full access, and we haven't been given full access. On top of that, we've been told that some of the data that's added to the ballot, the election administrators don't even know what it is. But when I was reviewing Dr. Paquette's work, I mentioned Andrew Paquette, and I'm going to add a link to the article so that people can go and watch the best presentation I've been able to find of his, which was on the Red Pill 78 podcast last year. Dr. Paquette is brilliant, and he found what he describes as a deterministic algorithm within a certain county's voter rolls, registered voter files. The deterministic algorithm allowed him to determine which county voter ID numbers were assigned to potentially duplicate voters. And based on certain numbers in that county voter ID, he could predict that that voter was going to be flipped into, it was going to be purged after the election. That voter registration file would be purged after the election. The fact that he can predict that and then prove it shows that this is not organic. These numbers are not being randomly assigned like we're told they are randomly assigned within a range of a given county's numbers. What it looks like we found is how they're able to inflate the voter rolls, cast and create unlawful ballots, which is what my teams of poll watchers have documented on the grounds, and other poll watchers have contributed to my work too. And additionally, create and cast unlawful ballots, and then track these unlawful voters and their ballots, and real voters and their real ballots, all the way through an election. After the election, they're collapsing fake voters, and they're also collapsing real ballots. That's what we believe is able to happen without detection. We also believe that explains the discrepancies between reported vote totals from the county level, reported vote totals from the state level, and reported voter turnout files from the county level and the state level. Because you'll have a county saying somebody voted and the state saying no, they didn't.
This is really interesting because Chris Kyle in Michigan has been saying the same thing, and he's got it documented. When they purge the voter rolls, it goes up right before an election, and then they remove them. There's people that are removed right after the election, but there's spikes. There's trackable spikes there. So how is this working? How are they doing it?
So it's happening through no matter what voting system you have. We use HART in my county in Tarrant, but next door in Dallas County, they use ES&S, and it works the same way, except that HART has an additional machine. HART uses a peripheral machine, not to add information to the ballot that's not directly from the e-poll book. So I'll start with ES&S as an example because it's the simpler one. When you use an ES&S, the ES&S express voting system, okay, for example, when you pick a ballot, you'll go up to the e-poll book, they'll check you in, they'll have you get a ballot, and they'll mark a barcode that's associated with your check-in. That barcode is only supposed to have your ballot style, which is based on your precinct. It's based solely on your precinct. Precincts are usually a 4-digit number, but instead of just saying, type this 4-digit number into the ballot marking device to pull up your precinct style ballot, they say, well, we're going to add a barcode to your ballot, and then you go and take that over, and that machine's going to scan the barcode. That's how it knows how to pull up your ballot style. They've been insisting for years that barcode only has your ballot style on it. We have been concerned that there's more on that barcode, that barcode represents a number and or digit and or alphanumeric representation of something. So we're concerned that has their name and their voter registration number and all these other things, namely their voter registration number. After you check in and the e-poll book in ES&S marks a barcode on your ballot, you take it over to the ballot marking device and you put it in and you make your selections on the screen and you hit enter and it prints out your ballot, right? When it's printing out your ballot, it adds additional information like a QR code and oftentimes an additional number that's like a hexadecimal number. I don't know if it's hexadecimal, but it's like that. There's numbers and letters. No one's been able to tell us exactly what that number is and what that number represents, but that's not how we number our ballots in Texas. That's the wrong way to number our ballots in Texas. So that's never been explained. That's also never been authorized by law. We do have a lawful ballot numbering system, but they're adding an additional ballot to it, adding an additional number. On top of that, they took away the lawful numbering system. So if for states that don't have a ballot numbering system, you have an even harder time detecting the insertion of fraudulent ballots. In Texas, we number our ballots correctly, we'll be able to detect that. Well, they took that away with no authorization. And we've since had it restored once we let our county government know that that's been taken away and it's mandated by state law. They restored that. So now in Tarrant County, we're able to detect a little bit easier if fake ballots have been inserted, meaning it's a little more difficult for a fraudster to insert fake ballots into a ballot box when they're numbered the way we have to number them in Texas. But when they took those numbers away, and a lot of states don't have ballot numbering laws, when they took those numbers away, this could happen. What I outlined in this report about how they're adding numbers to the ballots in order to track them so that they can remove ballots that are deemed undesirable and potentially insert ballots that they'd like, which they have every means to create at those polling locations, which are way overstocked with thousands and thousands of blank ballot stock. And my poll watchers and myself have documented that those election workers are not tracking all of the ballots. They're trained to only track the ballot stock, which bundles they open. But those thousands of other ballots in those bundles that came with the machines, no one's counting those. And I've documented that across several election cycles.
Wow.
So they're there with the blank ballots. They're there at the e-poll books. which I've also documented, that you can create multiple ballots for one voter check-in, create, vote on them, scan them. No one will ever know. The system is actually not designed to flag and report duplicate ballots cast by the same voter. So it's strange. We have so many clues. Everybody has like little bits. I didn't do all of this. I did compile all of this. But the work that Dr. Paquette did, the work that Barry Wernick did, and Susan Valiant, there are a lot of other people around the country that probably have more pieces of this puzzle. And if you do, you can contact me at takingtxback@gmail.com or Aubree, AUBREE, at goefi.org. You can send me any information you have, and I'm happy to consider it and see if it fits in to our theory that we're already designing strategies to address. We do have legislation filed in the state house that would close up some loopholes that wouldn't allow some of this stuff to happen. But I think it's really important, if we're going to talk about getting rid of the machines, if we're going to talk about going back to a paper ballot, we need to be able to explain to our legislators and our county government not only what the exorbitant cost of using computerized voting systems and the fact that you can't audit it. The fact that you can't audit it is it's built into the design, because of course you can't. If you could audit these, you'd have been able to detect this long ago. In this report, we cover ballot secrecy issues. We cover the cover-up of the discovery of ballot secrecy issues. We talk about the SOS issuing orders to violate state and federal law, all in the name of covering up what we found. We talk about the inflation and deflation of the voter rolls. We talk about the discrepancies between county reported vote totals and state reported vote totals, and the voter turnout files between county and state who actually voted, because the state and county don't always agree. And we do talk about the lack of auditability and the fact that you can't hide ballot secrecy. You can't destroy auditability in order to restore ballot secrecy after the election. See, the thing is, the ballot secrecy issue can't be fixed, and it's inherent to the unlawful relational database. And what I mean by the unlawful relational database is that data that we believe they're adding to the ballots that has more information than it should, in our opinion, we're concerned that it does, because it is very possible for it to, and we would never know without full access to these voting systems. That data that they're adding to the ballot, we believe, is tracking everything from the voter ID number all the way through to the voter selection and that unique number for that ballot. We also talk about how one of the poll watchers has documented election judges pulling voted ballots out of ballot bags at the close of polls and putting certain ballots on the top. And we talk about what everybody knows and nobody really knows what to do anything about, because it's the most hypocritical thing: the broken and missing chain of custody for the ballots. That's the only evidence that the ballot boxes weren't tampered with. And when that's broken, everyone has to understand chain of custody is the only evidence that the government has that they ran a lawful election. The burden of proof is not on the people to show that this election, which violates state and federal statute, resulted in different totals for the candidates. That burden of proof is not on us. We don't fill out the chain of custody to bring our evidence that we ran a lawful election. The state and the government employees and the election employees fill out that chain of custody, because that's their only evidence that they followed the law. And if they don't have that chain of custody, they don't have any evidence. We've not seen any evidence that we should trust the election results. And I'm of half the mind that we need to strengthen these chain of custody laws so much that it'll be a felony for you to mess up your chain of custody or to abandon it. Because again, when I'm watching them sort ballots, put certain ballots on top, I'm watching them overload these polling locations that are many times Democrat run with all of these excess ballots. I didn't put this in the report, but when the delivery from polling location to central count takes 4 hours and there's no one in line to vote. Okay, there's all kinds of circumstantial evidence. I only put in the report what we could actually rely on and prove. And I haven't even put all of my evidence into the report. I don't have the photographs in the report that the watcher took of the judges sorting the ballots out. I didn't put those photographs in there Some of the evidence that I have, we are still deciding how we're going to strategize to use it. But it does appear, especially after you watch Dr. Paquette's explanation of what he found with how some of these county voter IDs are being assigned to what look like duplicate voters, which are then potentially collapsed in mass right after the election. As everyone looks around themselves and says, wait a second, I thought we were all voting this way, as evidenced in Tarrant County, the largest conservative urban district in the nation. When they started making all of these changes to our election systems in 2018, that's the first time that Tarrant County flipped blue in over 50 years. And we were looking around saying, how did Beto O'Rourke win Tarrant County? Then again in 2020, we're looking around saying, how did Joe Biden win Tarrant County? That doesn't make any sense. We just became infuriated, which is why a lot of us started looking into this. So, I mean, this is kind of how it happens, where you're looking around and you're saying, wait a second, they're not giving me the records. The records are giving me they're unlawfully redacting. There's something they don't want us to see. When we finally get the Attorney General and the legislature to order them to give us the records unredacted, this is what we find. Massive ballot secrecy violations. We've linked thousands, I'm saying hundreds of thousands of people's ballots to their names just from what's available, just from public records. People didn't know. People didn't know that you could do this. And when we discovered it, the SOS told everybody to redact everything, which only destroys the auditable paper trail mandated by HAVA and covers it up. The issue is facilitated by the e-poll books, which are necessary for the tracking of the ballots. If my theory proves correct, I have tagged Heider Garcia from Smartmatic in Venezuela. He was my election administrator here in Tarrant County for a long time. He left and went next door to Dallas County. And I have tagged him on Twitter and asked him to, I tagged him with a little meme, Steven Crowder meme. And I said, Heider, change my mind. Change my mind. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong about that. I'd love to be wrong about this, Heider. Among so many things, I'd love to be wrong about this.
Do they have any other response? I mean, has there been any response?
Yes, because before I released this report, I was talking to my election administrator, for months about this. My new election administrator, since Heider, he doesn't want me to call him this anymore, so I'm not. I used to call him Heider Smartmatic Garcia, and he doesn't like it when I call him Heider Smartmatic Garcia. I'm not going to call him that anymore. But so when he worked in Tarrant County from 2018 until about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and then he left, went to Dallas. Since then, a man named Clint has been our election administrator. He's a Marine with an athletics degree. So he's learning as much about the computerized voting systems as anyone else, and he's been great, honestly. But he is still insisting that the databases that I believe are linked through the information that they're adding to the ballot, he's still insisting that they're separate databases. Of course, he reminds me, Aubree, I have an athletics degree. I'm depending heavily on experts that are telling me, no, these are separate. And they're showing me this. Okay. So he's saying, look, from what I understand, these are separate databases that are not able to be connected in any way. And I said, okay, but that does fit along with it. I do not believe that the election administrators would be, if this relational database exists, I don't believe that election administrators would be on the need to know list about it. We've detected it. We've detected its presence, and it's been unable to be refuted. And when we asked to look closer to confirm things, we're denied. Claiming proprietary, ESNS and HART won't let us look at it because it's proprietary. Now with ESNS, I described how the poll book marks directly on the ballot. With HART, there's an additional machine. But when you check in, the poll book will give you a barcode. Then you'll go over to this additional peripheral HART machine called a controller. That'll scan the barcode, which will give you a 6-digit access code. That you'll type that into the ballot marking device to pull up your ballot style. That 6-digit access code has all the information that was on that barcode. Whatever was on that barcode is now on the 6-digit access code. See, the 6-digit access code is only supposed to be, this is straight from Heider's mouth, Heider Garcia. He said that's your precinct number. That's all that's in there. And I said, well, Heider, my precinct is 4 digits. this is 6 digits. And I was like, why wouldn't you just have me type in my precinct number to pull up my ballot style? I'll just go and type in 1461, and that should pull up my precinct ballot style. And he says, well, we don't do that because of human error. And I was like, right, better give him 2 extra digits. That makes no sense, Hyder. That makes no sense. Okay. So ever since that explanation, we've been looking into this across a few different voting systems in a few different counties. And I was missing a big puzzle piece as to how they were able to actually conduct this and create this wholly unlawful database until I saw Dr. Paquette's work. And I do believe, now, I'm still waiting for him to get back to me about this report. And if I need to make any issues, any corrections, I will issue like an update. I'll issue the edit with context as to why I might have needed to change things. I think it's important that people who are reporting on the election and other issues too, I think it's important that they're willing to do that, is to issue little edits and with the context say, hey, I was wrong about this and I need to issue this correction. Here's why. Because sometimes that little bit of context makes a big difference in, the perception of what's being relayed. So there's a chance that I could be issuing some additional context or some edits, but I think he and I spoke, and I think we're on the same page about this. And his findings have independently verified 3 other people's findings that I've worked with, and they don't know each other. They don't know each other. I'm the only one that knows all of them, that has seen their work. But like you said, you know a man that has detected something like this, in another area. I'd love for him to contact us, and we can work together to help him expand this and see if all of these items that we've tracked as being added to the ballot, which we believe have more information than they should, are present in his elections as well. It'd be wonderful to be able to confirm this.
I think that'd be fantastic, because he's been speaking about this for quite a while, and you can see the manipulation that they're doing. And I don't know anybody personally, I know they're out there, that believes we had free and fair elections. The clerks are saying that, but the problem is they're seeing what's in their purview. They're not realizing that this is above their pay grade in running an election. They're flipping them in the machines, they're flipping them in the state, they're flipping them through absentee ballots. But to conduct a local election, I think a lot of them are trying to do a good job of that. I really do. But that's not where the cheating is coming in.
No, this can only be conducted at the administrative level. And I always do try to let, election administrators know, hey, look, we're not looking at this to come after you. Even Hyder and I, as much of a history and confrontational relationship as we sometimes have, a report was written about us by the Texas Tribune, calling us frenemies. frenemies. Because we get along fine. Most of the people running the elections are good people. They have no idea about this stuff, and if they start to realize, the sad thing is when we see it start to dawn on them through our open records requests that we're asking for, and through the drama from the Secretary of State, where she ordered them to redact personally identifiable information from the ballot. They were like, I didn't know there was any personal identifiable information on the ballot. These are supposed to be anonymous. So this puts election administrators in a really bad spot. And we've seen some of them react in ways that I wouldn't recommend. I'm not going to name them because we're not attacking them. But they've made poor decisions in how to handle some of our open records requests. And they have themselves kind of dirtied their hands because they don't want to be found in the wrong. But we're never going to go after people that we know didn't design this, didn't put this in place, and are not operating it. It's just that a lot of people running elections, they don't want to have been wrong, especially for so long. So we have to make sure that we have grace when we're, trying to explain these things to people, because good people running our elections, that they don't know what they don't know,
Well,
good, trusting Americans.
I think that comes to every part of our society right now, because we've absolutely been infiltrated. There's no 2 ways about it, on every level of government, in our society, our universities, the indoctrination system. I refuse to call it education system because it's not, as well as, food, health care, and all of it. It's all been infiltrated. And that's really the main weapon of war right there. We're going to have to come to terms with this and critically look at everything. And, if we're part of it, we need to step forward and be the solution, to help with the solution, not be part of the problem. So you're in
Right.
Texas, aren't you? Is it hot down there?
Oh yeah, it's already hot down here. And the thing is my AC is very loud, so I have to turn it off, otherwise you'll be able to hear it. But I'm so used to it. Don't worry about it. We're so used to it. Like I'm even in a sweater. So really, like, because I want it to be spring. It's supposed to be spring, but so I'm wearing my sweater. I'm wearing a spring sweater, but it's not. It's very hot. But the thing is a lot of people don't. When people want to get involved, we always recommend first thing is either get a job working the elections so that you can learn all about your particular election system. And, if you don't have the time to do that, because that's honestly, it's a lot of time. If you only have a couple days a week, or maybe even, a few hours a week, poll watching is the next best option for you. And we have a poll watchers course that we're about to release through another organization, who I'm not yet authorized to name, but I'll get it to you as soon as it's released. We have a national poll watchers training that we're about to release, which covers the basics of how a poll watcher can secure a polling location. And it's basically recording certain information. We're having them record this information that we've been tracking that's on the ballot, having them record different things like how many ballots are allocated to that location, the serial numbers on the machines, all of these different things we have them record. We give them context as to why they need to record those. Whether the watcher knows everything or not, that's not so important. The most important thing is that the watcher is able to get in there and just record the basic stuff that we're asking them to record. And they'll see it's basically everything involved in the election. It's basically everything involved. And the poll watchers have complete access to this. They have every right to look at everything and to request certain things. Of course, we train the watchers on what not to do. You don't want to act a fool. You don't want to argue with anybody, even if they're obstructing you. You don't want to argue with them. You just want to thoroughly document that, because we're going to press charges after the election. For sure. Poll watchers have been they've gone back and forth. Some people are like, yeah, they're helpful. Other people are like, no, they really can't stop anything. And the truth is, it's kind of in between there. The truth is in between there. I don't want them to stop anything. I want them to thoroughly document the entire crime as it's happening, firsthand witness. Because this is the only way we're going to be able to explain to, like I said, our local government and our legislators what we need to change, because they need to know what's actually happening on the ground. Unfortunately, another part of my work goes over the severe and widespread violations of the non-delegation doctrine, where legislators have delegated way too much of their rulemaking authority to executive branch agencies like the secretaries of state, or if you're from Oklahoma, the Board of Elections, whoever's the chief election official in a state, in most states, has been granted too much power. And they're kind of implementing whatever they want. And so that's why legislators can't describe what's happening on the ground at the elections, because they don't know. So we need to tell them. They don't have time to come down and watch the elections. And to be honest, if they're on the ballot, they can't watch the elections. They're not allowed in there. They're not allowed in the polling location if they're on the ballot. They need you. They need people like everyone who's watching this. And then they need people like Donna, who's able to bring people on to report our findings, because it is very hard to cut through all of the noise and get people to sit down and read a report like the one that I just put out. I didn't expect you were a fast response. I got responses from people closer to me, but you must have read it and you got back to me very quickly. And that's honestly, that makes me feel really good. It makes people like me and other people, some of the ones I mentioned in the report, some that are not yet named, that work really hard. We feel appreciated when people like you, Donna, read our reports and are able to understand them and appreciate the severity of this issue.
It is the biggest issue. That and child trafficking are the biggest issues of our times, in my opinion. So if we can't fix the child trafficking, if we don't fix the elections, so it's like, what comes first? The elections come first, and the prioritization of this. We have to get a handle on this. So when people text me, I generally jump right on their text and get back to them, unless I've had a few messages come in this morning. And so, but I try to get back right away. And I do read the stuff people send to me to try to be.
You got back right away. That was so impressive. I said, oh, because I didn't know if you would say, who is this? You didn't question me before you read it. And so that was really, sometimes people qualify like, who are you? I don't know if I'm going to read this. I don't really know who you are.
But
and I can understand that.
I remember who you were, because I remembered when we met, and it's like, I remembered when we met, I had, besides that, I take pictures and I do notes on people after I meet them so that when they call, I don't, have to fumble around trying to establish a baseline. And I think that's how we really honor people, is to actually know who we're talking to and establish that rapport with people that are good people, such as yourself.
No, I mean, that was amazing. Like, honestly, when she got back, I felt that it really put a smile on my face. I said, oh, wow. Sometimes people take months to read my reports and I'll get a response months later and I'll be like, yeah, well, I'm glad you're on board, but I think you're probably one of the fastest responses and your response indicated that you'd already reviewed it. And so I said, okay, well, that was really cool. So normally I run interviews by my president, Rob. I'd love to have him on. I'll send him your contact number to him because he's got a lot of information as well. And if you'd like, I'll connect you with some of the other investigators that have contributed to my past reports and whose completed works I cited in this report, but I didn't add their work to the report because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. These reports get like way out of hand and I have a tendency to ramble. So I was like, nope, keep it narrow so people will, don't bury the lead, So I tried to do that with this report and I really hope I did. And captured it the way everyone else that I've cited in the report has gotten back to me and said, that's it. That's what we found. And so we need a little bit more time to expand it, but I'd love to keep you updated and to bring on people. I'd love to get you Dr. Andrew Paquette's number because his finding was probably one of the hardest. I knew that I was looking at something, but I couldn't see it. It was right in front of me and I couldn't see it. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the education. But Dr. Paquette saw it. And whenever I saw his findings in that Red Pill 78 interview, I said, wow. So if it's all right with y'all, I'll try to see if I can get y'all connected. I think your viewers would appreciate that.
I think so too, because our viewers are typically a little bit more engaged and aware and educated on what's actually going on. And so when something comes on that's really pertinent, they want to know. They want to know and get to the bottom of it. They're not typically surfacey type people, which I appreciate. They wouldn't last here very long if they were surfacey.
Right.
Because we do.
Well, there's nuance to all of this. There's so much nuance and it's hard to keep up with all of that, and it's also hard, but I think they'll appreciate his explanation and I think they'll understand his findings. And I mean, if they don't, it's fine. Watch it a couple of times, and it'll catch up. But all of your viewers who have been on the election security train, for years, they'll appreciate what he's found. And it is not the average person who can find what he's found. And that's why I think is a God thing. Like God designed his brain exactly how it needed to be designed to see this pattern that only somebody like him would find, and it absolutely confirms what we believe is the case, that there does exist an unlawful relational database tying voters to their ballots for the purpose. Now, and that right there that's bad enough, but we believe that it exists for the purpose of collapsing fake voters after they've been used in an election and collapsing real votes and basically to facilitate the obfuscation of the insertion of fraudulent ballots without detection.
Well, I tell you, I look forward to talking to you more. I look forward to talking to you more about this because the implications of this is absolutely horrific in what they can do, not only to target you during an election, but to target you as an individual if they have that information and they know how. I've seen some of the reports that are out there that you can get as a candidate. They know what your pets are. They know your pets' names. They know all of this stuff about you. They can tie you to a ballot, in the surveillance state that we're in. The implication of that is catastrophic. Your voice can be taken away so easily because they get in behind the scenes. They can get in behind your phone. They get behind anything. Change plant information and change everything about you. But with the elections, I mean, we're talking catastrophic failure of a nation, a national security threat that defies explanation. Well, I appreciate you coming on this morning. and I'd like to talk with you more. So we'll stay on the line when we end, and then we'll talk some more. But I always end with a prayer, and so let's go to that, and then we're going to go to talking about some more things after we get offline, and then we're going to schedule some more of this, because this is the number one issue of our generation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Aubree, and thank you so much for all the wonderful people that are willing to come on and talk about things. Vicky, as well as those people that want to get to the bottom of things, that are truth seekers. We all should be truth seekers in finding your truth, and the truth that you're with us every day, and we're just so thankful. There's so many people with broken hearts right now, and I ask that you would come alongside of them and give them peace that passes understanding, that you would carry them, that you would give them the feet to walk the path that's in front of them. We trust you, we love you, we don't need to know what the outcome is, but we know that you're in charge and that everything's going to be okay. We just have to walk through this period of time so that we educate ourselves, and it can never happen again, in working here in service to your world. We're just here on a work visa for you. You ask us what you'd like us to do, and we're willing to go in whatever direction, whatever it is that you ask us to do. We're willing, because we are not out of obligation, but because we love you, and we're so thankful that you just truly love us and care about us, and that we're never truly alone. You'll never forsake us or leave us, and we're just thankful for that so very much. Please pour your spirit out in this land, and wake people up a little bit to the reality that this is your world, your sandbox, and we have to play by your rules here, because if we don't, we get out from underneath your protection, and we acknowledge that. We thank you for that protection and your guidance and your provision. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. So,
Amen.
Yeah, here we go, boys and girls. We're going to go with that part of the show. Ding, ding, ding. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best 19th year who's ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I'd like to have a discussion with President Donald J. Trump, the rightful president of the United States in cowboy boots, see who wears them better, but also just to have a discussion with him and thank him for everything he's done for this nation. We're not alone. We've got a lot of really good people fighting with us, like Aubree and Vicky. The people that are behind the scenes, that aren't always in front of the microphone, are probably more significant than the ones that are in front of the microphone, quite honestly, or that are out in the public. We've come to know that if somebody's just out there doing it for money, building an audience, you have to ask yourself why. The ones that are working tirelessly as the soldiers behind the scenes, that are in the trenches every day, make sure we thank each and every one of them when you come across them, like Aubree. And I'm going to just say thank you, and thank you to Vicky for all the work that you put into this, and all of your friends, Susan and Barry, and Dr. Laura Pressley, and Dr. Andrew Paquette. I'm looking at their names right here on your report, and how gracious you are in sharing that with them, and making sure that they're thanked also. So with that, boys and girls, we're going to see you tomorrow morning with John Tater with Lawful Defenses. We're going to crawl through these laws some more, and quite honestly, still filing more lawsuits out there. This is going to be a real fun next few weeks. I can't talk about them exactly, but pretty extra sure that we're going to see some motion in this direction, because we're not going to stop until we see this republic restored. It's not a democracy. That is a change of words that do not fit the type of government we have, and words matter. So we're going to continue on until we write things here and bring it back to what the founding fathers had intended for us. Have a great day, and just know that God bless you. God bless all those who you love, and God bless America. Make it a good day. It's a choice. It's a choice to go out with a smile on your face and spread peace and love and stability, even in a storm, wherever we go. I'll see you tomorrow.